and entrepreneurship. We do that in a variety of different ways, whether it's through our cultural programs. So this kind of event here couldn't be more fitting to host here. We also do it through our wellness programs and our carefully kind of curated community. So we really like to bring together as many different kind of wide and varied businesses as possible in the attempts to bring people together with creative collisions and kind of enrich people's experience as entrepreneurs. If you guys want any more information about Second Home, please come and find me. I'll be here all evening. I can't wait to see how this evening goes. It's going to be great. Without further ado, I will pass you along to Barry Wright, the co-founder of SeriesQ. So, round of applause, everybody.
Thank you. Hey, everyone. So, let's start off with a little bit of audience participation. Throw your hand up if you've been to a SeriesQ event before. Oh my God, wow, that's good repeat business. I love that. Throw your hand up if you're new, and this is, okay, 60, 40, that's good. Just to get a sense of who's in the room, if you would consider yourself an entrepreneur, put your hand in the air. Keep your hand in the air if you're a founder of a business. If you have been the founder at some point in the past. If you want to be a founder at some point in the future. Okay, good, got the right crowd. Throw your hand up if you work at a startup. Excellent. If you're a freelancer. If you're an investor. Yes, score. Thank you all for coming here tonight. As you might know, tonight is our birthday. So, SeriesQ. SeriesQ is 1 year old, and we're kind of surprised even to get to this place. SeriesQ actually started more like 18 months ago or so in this very room right here. The wonderful Josh Rivers hosted an event. It was called Coming Out as an Entrepreneur. And shocker. And at the event, you know, a lot of us connected. A lot of the core SeriesQ team met each other for the first time. And it just sort of gradually and organically evolved into a meetup group. We ran some events every now and then, modeled on Start Out in the United States, who are good friends of ours. And over the course of the past year, we've just grown and gained this incredible sense of momentum. I look around today and we've got canopies, we've got cocktails, we've got incredible keynote speakers, we've got sponsors. And I'm really quite amazed at how it all has kind of organically come together. But most importantly, we've got community, everyone in the room, because that's what we're all about. We're about connecting each and every one of you here. So hopefully tonight's an opportunity for all of you to make some great new connections. So and talking about that community, every month we grow by around 100 members. Every event we have kind of has around 100 people or so. But we thought it was important to take a step back and just remember why we're doing this in the first place. So the startup community, as we all know, is driving the future of the economy right now. Young people are choosing to enter the startup world rather than going through a more traditional career path, such as joining a graduate program at a professional services firm. Lots of people are choosing to migrate north from the city, ditching professional jobs, entering the startup world. And in those large corporates, there's enough scale for LGBT affinity groups to exist. If you join a bank, you can be part of the LGBT group, and that enables you to feel a sense of community, visibility, and enables you to feel confident in being yourself at work. Startups just don't have the scale to provide such groups. That's why we need to do this at a cross-industry level. Secondly, startups thrive on connections. Everyone in this room meeting each other, founders meeting investors, meeting freelance talents. That's the lifeblood of our industry, and it's important for us to be able to do that in the LGBT space. So that's why SeriesQ exists. So, what are we all about? Our mission is to empower LGBT entrepreneurs and their colleagues across the startup ecosystem. We took a bit of time recently as a team to try and work out what this means, and we decided on 3 things. Visibility, being open and out and giving new people joining the startup world reassurance that they can be their authentic selves. We decided it's about connectivity, as I just mentioned, bringing everyone together. And we decided it's about inspiration, role models, people such as Antonia, who we'll be hearing from very, very shortly, talking about their experience and inspiring all of us with our own startup journeys. So this all sounds rather easy, but one thing we discovered in putting this event together tonight is just how difficult it is to find great role models such as Antonia. There aren't that many successful LGBT entrepreneurs out there in London that you can identify. If you look at any power list of LGBT people, you know, whether it's the Financial Times one or one of the many that you'll see on the internet, you'll be hard pushed to find many entrepreneurs in that list. It's a bit of a desert. As a result, SeriesQ, for me personally, has evolved from a bit of a passion project into something with a deep, deep sense of purpose. And I think that's why we're really excited tonight to do two things. Firstly, tell everyone that we're we're moving from being a meetup group to an actual non-profit. Any of us with the Q sticker on will be more than happy to tell you a bit more about what that means. But essentially it means we will be able to run bigger, better events. We'll be able to make some investments in content, and we'll be able to reach more people. Speaking of reaching more people, the second exciting thing we want to tell you all about tonight is we'll shortly be launching a content series. So we want to take SeriesQ out of this room. We want to take all the inspirational speakers that we bring to these events, and we want to put them out there. Let anyone around the country, around the world, engage in the content and the phenomenal speakers who inspire us. So stay tuned for the SeriesQ podcast series, and more on that later. Talking about inspirational speakers, it's time for us to hand over to Scott McGregor, who's going to introduce our speaker for tonight, Antonia. Scott is chair of our advisory board and has known Antonia for many years.
Thanks, Barry. Well done. It is a big party here, 1 year old, so it's great. I was talking too close to the speaker. I wanted to select a speaker tonight. I'm an entrepreneur in a traditional industry, energy industry, which is, for the sort of East London startup world, a bit boring. I was keen to get a speaker that is from a traditional sector, and Antonia's building sector. And it's, you know, in the startup world, I think there's still an issue with LGBT leaders and role models. But in traditional sector, it's actually really hard. And we need role models, and we need leaders, CEOs of companies driving diversity right across corporates and different sectors. So I'm quite proud to introduce Antonia. Very good friend, very genuine, big inspiration. And in the sector, being in the city of London is quite tough. And what she's done is quite amazing. So let's hear her story.
Is this working now? Fine. Hi, Antonia. There's your mic there. Welcome to SeriesQ. It's also a big night for us. I want to give a special shout out to our sponsors, Blued, who are actually live streaming this entire event on their app. Blued is a new social app which aims to provide a safe space for queer people to connect and be creative and meet each other. After this, we'll be having a DJ, Monroe Bergdorf, whom many of you will know from our past events and from Life on the Scene. She'll be DJing, and we also have canapes. So it's going to be a nice little party, hopefully, as well. But I'm really thrilled to have Antonia Belcher here. Thank you for coming, Antonia.
You're very welcome.
I've got my notes, so you'll have to forgive me. So each time we reach out to an entrepreneur and ask them to speak at a SeriesQ event, we always expect a no. And so when someone says yes, we're quite stunned. And it's just as stunned as we are to see a full room again. There's always this nervousness that people won't get what we're doing or they won't see the importance of it. And that you're here means a lot. So thank you so much. The event tonight is called Entrepreneurs, and I think that this is an open-ended question. I think that truth means a lot to you. It perhaps has a special significance.
Very much so. I'll try and answer these as succinctly as I can. So just give me.
But we love a rambler.
Okay, fine. That's perfect. So I need to tell you a little bit about my story in order to be able to sort of pitch that correctly. Before I was 10, I knew I wasn't a conventional boy. I was the eldest of 4, 2 younger brothers and a younger sister. But I just knew that I wasn't a boy. I didn't know that I was a girl, necessarily. I just knew there was a difference in me, in what I thought, how I saw things. But I wasn't exemplifying that difference. I wasn't articulating it in any way. So the family weren't disturbed. No one wondered about me. I just enjoyed playing with my brothers, and I enjoyed doing what a gentler boy would do. I still liked a bit of rough and tumble with my brothers, but I wasn't the most. I wasn't that real out and out boy. But it worried me the way I thought, and I was in a very conventional family: Catholic mother, agnostic, atheist father. He left everything to mum, and we were just a working class family. Dad was a builder, and he worked his socks off, and I very rarely saw him. But I just knew that to sort of say anything about how I felt was going to sort of destabilize the family. And of course, this was back in I was born in 1957. I turned 60 in February, so just to put it into context time-wise. My way of dealing with the way I felt was to lock it away. I had to sort of just put it in the farthest reaches of my mind and not let myself go there. I think if I knew that if I thought about it, it wasn't going to do me good. Occasionally I'd weaken, and I would think what it was like to be a girl, and it would be all played out in my mind. I would sort of think, there's a magic room I could go to where I could go in there and no one would know I'm in there, but actually I would become the girl that I might like to think I could be. But all of this was just mental, and as I say, my defense was to lock it away. And as I became an older teenager and puberty was coming along and things like that, I just realized that I had to be the boy that everyone thought I was, even though I knew I probably wasn't. As a young child, I enjoyed play. I didn't really work very hard at school. As I became a teenager, I realized I needed to be more serious about schooling. And I found that actually the harder I worked at school, the more I didn't think about my other condition. I realized that keeping my brain engaged and making it do things, it stopped me thinking about that other thing. And that actually taught me as I became an older teenager that I did need to work hard, because it was the way I managed to lock things away. So I knuckled down, worked hard, and in that process, I was saying to myself, you've got to be the boy that everyone thinks you are. I was attracted to girls. I'd never really thought about myself necessarily perhaps being attracted to boys. So naturally, it led me to meet a girl, and I liked her a lot. I tend to fall in love with brains rather than physicalities, so her brain was good. And we got engaged, and this was all part of my pathway. It was keeping myself really engaged, and I joined. My parents couldn't afford to send me to university. They did sort of pretend to suggest it might be possible, but I knew it would be financially difficult. So I opted to go straight to work, but I wanted to get more qualified, so I did day release. And for 5 years, I worked as a day release candidate at South Bank, working 4 days a week at a surveying practice in the West End of London. And I did aim high. I found myself a surveying practice that was in Mayfair, good credentials, and I knew I was going to get good training. And I worked with them, and again, it's all part of this keeping myself really engaged and not to think about myself. Anyway, I married Andrea, and we had 3 children, and I worked hard at the partnership. I became a very young salaried partner, and all sorts of things happened at that practice. In fact, I ended up being the only one in the department. I had joined as a junior because the practice sacked the more senior people I was working for. I thought that I was going to get made redundant or asked to leave. But they turned to me and they said, "We like you. Could you please now reinvigorate this department and make it into a bigger part of the business," and all the rest. So I worked hard on that, and they made me a salaried partner. And eventually I got made an equity partner, and it was brilliant, and I was enjoying it. But I got to my sort of mid-30s when I sort of looked at myself, and I saw that everything was easier. I had 3 wonderful children, a lovely partner. I had all the material things that one looks for, nice car, good home. I'd even bought a property in France and was sort of using that as a device to keep myself busy, trying to restore it through the holidays. But I sort of just looked at myself and I thought, things are easier. I don't have to worry about being overdrawn at the bank anymore. And suddenly my mind just started to wander back to this other me. And which I was learning was a true me, which I had locked away, and so I had to sort of give it some space. I had to sort of just allow myself to think about it more than I had, and naturally that led to me wanting to cross-dress, which I would do occasionally. I would buy some clothes. Got brave, would go into Marks and Spencer's and buy the odd skirt, the odd blouse, and I would wait till...
Would you try them on in the shop?
Pardon?
Would you try them on in the shop?
No, definitely not in the shop.
Okay.
No, I was in suit, tie, and brogues. No, this was Anthony shopping, trying to look as if he was buying something for his wife, so that it looked convincing. But I would buy these things. It would be predestined in the sense I knew my wife Andrea was going to be on holiday or away with the kids or visiting friends, or I was going to be out on a driving up north work-wise to survey some buildings, and I was out of the office for 3 days.
I have to say, the easier thing actually has really struck me, that that you realize once you had kids and a family and money and this person you had built, that your mind actually thought, oh, now it's easier. Because I imagine many of us, well, now it's too late. Isn't that perhaps what many people think? So I'm interested in how your mind works in that way.
I think it's very much so. In terms of, I think the worst thing you can be is trans and poor.
Well, and by worse, I think she means the most unfortunate thing you can be is trans and poor.
I do mean unfortunate.
Because it's not stylish to be poor and trans, I think, is not what she meant.
That might be true too. No, I mean, we're jumping, obviously.
But I thought it was interesting because as entrepreneurs, as people who are building businesses and building careers, I think there's often this impetus on us doing it now, because if we don't do it now, later is going to be too late. And so I just find it's an interesting point of view, or perhaps a paradigm even, that you were able to establish yourself and set all this stuff up around you that actually might all come crashing down, actually, if you make this transition.
I can see where you're coming from. The social stereotyping in terms of gender, it's not just as strong in gender, it's strong in everything. I mean, in my case, working class family, we were expected to do good. We had to work hard, mind your P's and Q's, but work hard. And I wanted to work hard, and I wanted to get somewhere. I used it though at another level. I used it to hide something, and it was a successful way for me to hide it. But I got to a point where I think that dam was overflowing, and I had to.
That was around 2007.
No, this was about 1995.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, because I think you had another house that you were playing. No, I don't want to say dress up; it feels disrespectful. But you were presenting yourself in private.
Yeah. So what happened was the house in France was somewhere where I could go weekends, and I would be saying to the wife and the kids, I'm going over to do some work. I'm going to paint the windows, or I'm going to do this. But actually, I had bought some clothes.
But did you actually paint the windows?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I
I'm just
yeah,
me,
yeah.
inquisitive girlfriend. I'm like, well, why does it paint it?
No, you'll probably understand that I'm quite organized and I project manage everything, leave nothing to chance. But so I basically had these opportunities to dress, and I dressed. And in the initial stages, I would buy things purely for a night of dressing, and afterwards I would be disgusted with myself, and I would think, this is terrible. You're playing with fire, and I would throw the things away. And I did that for a couple of years, and then I found myself actually just not throwing things away. I'd buy a lot, but it would all get thrown away. And then I found myself just sort of thinking, no, I really like that skirt. I'm going to keep that. And I would find places in my car where I could hide them, and I would leave them. And I did this for a couple of years. And the first time I put clothes on, female clothes on, I saw myself in the mirror, and I didn't know what I was doing. I borrowed a bit of Andrea's makeup. I put some mousse in my hair, and I just frizzed it around. And when I looked in the mirror, I just saw my younger sister. And for me, it just sort of made me think, well, maybe I should have been that girl that I think I am. And from that spawned these odd dressing occasions. I generally didn't want to try my wife's clothes on. I didn't want to try anyone else's clothes on. I just thought that was disrespectful, hence I bought these bits. Anyway, it got worse. I kept more, and I realized I wanted to have a second life. I didn't want to disrupt my normal life, my day life, but I wanted a second life. I wanted more than just putting the odd clothes on and the odd walk out of the door for 5 minutes and hope there's no neighbors or anyone that might know me around. I wanted to have some permanent opportunities to be Antonia. So I told some fibs to my wife. I said, I'm in property. I see the emerging buy-to-let opportunities. We should buy a flat. We lived in Guildford. I said, I don't know the east side of London, so it'd be great to buy over there. Thinking that she wouldn't want to come all the way over to East London. And anyway, so...
And you were right?
And I was right.
She was like, where?
It was in Docklands. It was a good buy.
Where?
And so I bought this flat. And only thing is, after 6 months, I pretended to her we couldn't get a tenant. And I just said to her, what I need to do is probably start using this flat. And so I... convinced her that the flat was something I could use during the week. It would help my networking at work. I would be able to stay later in town, not have to worry about getting back to Guildford. And she was fine with that. And this place became Antonia's home. I started to become Antonia. So I would.
Sorry, when did you choose had you chosen the name Antonia a while ago? Is that can I ask that?
Yeah, you can. You can certainly ask her that. So my name was Anthony Dennis Belcher. My name now is Antonia Denise Belcher. So my initials and my signature is entirely the same.
Oh, that's handy.
No, it's planned.
No, because I know it's not polite to ask what your name was previously. I guess I was just curious if as part of this process you had kind of always understood that was going to be your name, or there was a naming ceremony or something.
No. When I decided to lead this second life, I knew that I would need to sign my name somewhere. And it was just very easy to
organized
keep
and practical
with
and
A.D.
project.
Belcher, and I love the name Antonia, and I like the name Anthony.
So I'm going to fast forward just a little bit because I'm curious about, you've decided to make this transition, and I think this will come up as well as we go through the evening. Vivian Ming is a neuroscientist and all-around badass. Yeah, fabulous. And she was telling a group of us, you probably remember at one of our first SeriesQ meetups, that she was a straight white man, scientist, mathematician, who transitioned into being a lesbian trans woman. And I was like, I mean, if that doesn't tell you very clearly how, if that contrast isn't very clear, I mean, it's just so clear. Were you ready for that? Did you expect that when you made that decision to come out and transition? Were you expecting the reality of what that would look like?
No, because I embarked on my second life without wife, kids, work, no one knowing what I was doing. And I did that for 5 years. So I would leave work at 7:30, go to my flat, I would become Antonia, I would go out about 10:30, and I would start to try and find another world that existed. And it was all new, I didn't know it was there, but I just searched for it. And I would stay out till 3, 4 in the morning, enjoying being Antonia, and then I would get back, a few hours kip, scrub the makeup off, and get back to work the following morning for 8:30. And I did it Monday through to Thursday night. At the weekends, I had to revert being back totally to Anthony, and I did that for about 5 years. And in that time, I did build a second life. So going back to your point about my initials, I created bank accounts and store card accounts as Antonia Belcher. And I was able to live this other person, but nocturnally only, and only for the middle of the week.
And your family's been incredibly supportive.
The people I met were incredibly supportive. Yeah, I just created a whole new cast of friends.
But I mean, once you transitioned, your family were quite supportive?
So it was after doing that for 5 years that I started to feel guilty. I was lying and cheating to all the ones I loved, and I also had begun to realize that living only a nocturnal existence as Antonia wasn't going to be enough. I wanted to be Antonia all the time. So I told my wife. It crushed her world big time. And I thought, and you know, you can't tell the person you'd been married to for 20, 25 plus years at that point that you're not the person she thought you were without it having dramatic consequences. So I said to her, you know, I'm going to tell you something that's going to change your world. I can't do
She probably thought you were going to give her a ring or something, or like, I want to renew our vows.
No, she thought I was having an affair with another woman because of the change in me over the last 5 years. That was how she sort of thought of it in her own mind. So, and she actually said to me when I told her she would have preferred that to have been the case. Anyway, her way of dealing with it was to drink and to try and find another place where she didn't need to think about it. And so it was a struggle for her. And it took her, I mean, at the time when I told her, I said, divorce me, find a new man, and start a new life, because I don't think you're going to be, you want what's going to happen. But ironically, she didn't ask for divorce, and she didn't push for the subject. She just closed into herself, and she had a 2-year period when it was really hard to sort of, for me to see where things were going to go. But I just had this aim and this desire that maybe we could stay together, also because of the kids. The kids were all late teenage years at that point. But after 2 years, she just said to me one day, she said, I've mourned Anthony's death. I've mourned Tony with a Y's death. I'm okay now. We'd helped her sort of come off the booze. And she just said, I see a brighter world. I see a new world. And actually, there's this other person, this other Tony with an I that's around. And I actually realised this Tony with an I is a nice person, and actually I would like to spend the rest of my life with this Tony with an I. And
oh my God.
So
gays are shit. That's amazing. I think we should give a round of applause for Andrea. That's beautiful. That's really beautiful.
So we stay together. So she though is a star, and obviously my star, and she has also transitioned. When you're transgender and you transition, you don't do it in a vacuum. Everyone seems to think it's you that's transitioning, and you're doing it on your own. You're not. All the people who love you and
just make sure you hold the mic to your mouth.
All the people that love you and are feeling for you, they're going to transition as well. They have to change, and obviously Andrea, my partner, she's changed massively. So so this was back in early 2000. When this occurred, so it was at that point that I started to transition, and I decided I needed to project manage my transition. I learned from this process that if you want your loved ones to stay in your life, then you need to treat them respectfully, and you can't just ram it all down their throats. So I actually said to myself, I need to take this in measured steps and in bite-sized chunks where people can handle it. And so Andrea had said to me when I told her initially, let's not tell the children until we think they're ready for it. So that was a managed process. And I progressively told family until I then decided I needed to tell work. But going back to your the first question, of course, that is the truth in me. The truth is that for many years I led a life which wasn't really true. It wasn't the true me. And to be able to be authentic is the most fantastic thing in the world.
Well, I mean, we celebrate you. That's obviously, it takes so much guts for anyone, I think, to realize their truth, particularly in a world that doesn't always necessarily want them to be themselves. So I'm going to give a round of applause again for... And it almost feels sacrilegious now to move on to work, but, you know, I am curious to understand how we as senior leaders, as entrepreneurs, as people who are building businesses, how can we be truly creating environments that are supportive and encouraging to the trans community?
The best way is by example, and therefore allies and open door. It has got, well, it is the best way. There's no doubt about it. If a non-out trans person is working in a business and there's no sign of them being trans, which would have been the case with me, that no one guessed I was trans or would have thought so. But if you're working in a business where you just think, you know, you're constantly monitoring everything, you're just reading everything. If you think that business is not going to allow you to be your true self, then you're not going to venture there. And when I transitioned, you know, no businesses were what I call trans-friendly or trans-aware. And I just had to say to myself, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it. Now, that shouldn't need to be the case. Businesses should be prepared. They should be ready.
But it takes more than, you know, non-gender specific bathrooms,
Absolutely.
right? It's so much more than that, and I feel like
it's culture.
And so what is that culture? I'm very, very curious, like, because we owe it to our community, to our brothers and sisters, to be respectful, to be mindful, to create environments for them where they can succeed as much as we want to succeed ourselves. Yeah. And so I'm curious, you know, culture is a fabulous word and everyone uses it, but how do we create a culture? What is it? Can we say something? Can we do something? Is it a rule?
No. For me, knowing what I know now and having transitioned in a business where there was no LGBT influences, I obviously recognize that just a business that is prepared and friendly and ready is going to allow that person to come out. If the business isn't doing that, then that person, if she wants to come out, then they will move somewhere else. And of course, you're going to be able to do that now because businesses are starting to recognize that, you know, it sounds perverse, but I think, you know, if you have a trans employee who's not out, you're crazy if you lose them. I mean, you know, there is so much about them that is going to be a benefit to the business. I know we're sort of locking into the hype of what's going on at the moment, and businesses talk about their CSR policies and all the rest, and therefore, you know, it's a good tick in the box. But if you come from the moral, ethical background, you want a happy workforce, you want a workforce that's loyal, then you're going to have that with a trans person who's been given all the opportunities to be their true self. I mean, they're generally very resilient people because they have to be resilient to be themselves. If you allow yourself to unlock that resilience and use it in the business, they're generally got a good level of emotional intelligence. All the things they hide because they think it gives them away, you're going to unlock those and you get the benefits of it from a business. I see this, I know this, it's happened for me, it happens with me.
Do you think that trans is lost when it's in the LGBT space? Do you think it's the right place for...
I don't think it's lost. I think we're all... I was going to say happy bedfellows. We're all part
I'm
of.
like trying not to make eye contact with anyone.
we're, no, it's not lost. What I fear is that it's not being given the sort of, it's not being given the space to become more than it is. It's like T is tacked on to the LGB, and part of the skeptic in me thinks the LG world for quite some time has not wanted trans necessarily in its space. Now it does. You just wonder, is this driven by the more sort of corporate social responsibility side of things we see, all the questions of funding? Is funding going to start to dry up for the more conventional lesbian, gay side of life because it's more accepted now, and therefore there could be more funding with the trans side, because trans is 20, 30 years behind the lesbian, gay world in terms of trying to be its own community, and I see it all the time. We are a very fragmented community. We're quite.
Sorry, do you mean the trans community or the LGBT community?
No, the trans community.
Right.
I mean, facts are changing all the time, so I can't be 100% sure. But in the UK, we have close to 100 different charities, but they're generally all a man and a dog on the trans world, on the trans side. Can everyone hear me? Yeah, okay. Yeah, and that's crazy, really, because we're all trying to do, all those charities are trying to do the same thing. Some might focus on the young, some might focus in the workplace, some might focus in terms of the support to the families that are affected by someone coming out.
So there hasn't been the kind of coordinated,
No.
The gays are like machines.
No, there's no coordination. No, there's very little coordination. There's been attempts to try and create it. Now, there's a couple of reasons why it sort of stumbles. And it goes really to the core of what the public see. The public see the trans community or the question of being transgendered as a very rare thing. They don't generally know many trans people.
Yeah, because everyone's acting like it's a brand new thing. Like there's never been a trans person before.
Yep, they've been around all the time.
Well, the indigenous people prove it.
Yep. And I suggest they've been around all the time. Most people will know a trans person who they don't realize they're trans.
It's just like the gays. They're everywhere.
Well, I don't know if we're, yeah. But statistically, I think we are greater than greater in numbers than people believe, or what the current statistics suggest. Particularly if we start to think about the non-binary aspects of the transgender community. So, and of course, a lot of transgender people who are stealth. So, by being stealth, no one knows. They don't.
What do you mean by stealth?
Stealth means that it's a transgender person who is representing entirely as non-trans. So they're representing as cisgender, but they are actually transgender. So cisgender is obviously anyone who's not trans. So it would mean that Mark left his home life, left north of the country, came to London, and is now Mary, and everyone only knows that person as Mary, and is a convincing trans person. But if we were able to collect all the numbers statistically and actually find out how many transgender people there are, the community could be quite big. And if we could garner it, I think is a really powerful force, because a lot of the bad media or a lot of the bias, whether it's conscious or unbiased towards trans, is fed on the fact that we are a real minority, or we're believed to be a minority by Joe Public. Now, if Joe Public thought, blimey, Mark's lived next to me for the last 20 years, I didn't realize they're trans, and what a nice person that is, it just starts to put some context behind the reality of what's going on.
Sure, I mean, it certainly mirrors the evolution of the perception of the LGB community, perhaps.
Yeah.
Stonewall does a school report every year, and I just read this the other day. Their latest school report says that 2 in 5 trans students have tried to kill themselves.
Yeah.
And 1 in 5 LGB students has tried to do the same. And for me, that's quite shocking, and it shows that we've obviously got a huge problem that needs addressing. what will it take for us to move this needle forward in a really meaningful way? Is it role models? Is it people like you? Is it an older generation of people who heretofore haven't been able to be themselves and feel empowered to do so now?
Yeah. I think role models do help and are important. Like any minority group in life, if there's someone out there that's doing what you believe is not possible, then it's got to send the right message. And to that extent, I try to be a role model. I'm very cognizant of the fact that when I transitioned, I was already successful in business. As I said earlier on, I had money, so it wasn't like I was risking my last, meal. That was never going to happen. But I did get to a point where I did risk everything. I had to say to myself, before I spoke to Andrea, was, everything I've done, everything I've gained as a man, that I'm not, but I've got to lose it all. I've got to be able to say to myself, it's going to go, in order to be the true me. And it's that message that when I did that back in early 2000, I transitioned between 2000 and 2003. It's not like that now. Generally, it's not like walking off a cliff. It's still a very big issue, and
for perhaps for a different privilege level, it's not the same, but certainly for others it might be. But
if you're married, then it is a big problem because, and this is the big issue, is I still read of and know of men who transition, and it's very rare for the wife to want to stay, either just as a friend or indeed as a soulmate or a partner.
Did you have a trans mentor?
No. Did I speak to anyone? No. Did I tell my doctor? No, because I didn't risk it with any of my male. I didn't talk to my friends beforehand. I didn't have anyone.
So this motivation, this grit, I guess, that it takes, was not modeled on anyone. This came from Antonia.
Yeah.
Like, where does one find? I'm curious. Like, I don't want to relate transitioning to business because that seems like a very tenuous connection. But when it comes to us as individuals, as people, finding our own grit for whatever it is, if it's being our authentic selves or running businesses or transitioning, what was it that gave? Where did you look for that? How did you find it? It's a very existential question. I'm sorry, but
it is, and actually, you're probably the first to ask me that. Although I think people have sort of nearly got there. I don't know. I don't know where it came from. It seemed to develop with my mind being prepared to say, although I was successful and although I was leading a life that wasn't bad, I didn't abhor my male body. I didn't hate myself. I just knew I wasn't the real me. And when I told my wife, that really was the first thing, and it just came out of, we went to the Seychelles on holiday, we had a lovely week, and at the end of the week we were having dinner on the last night, and I found myself telling her. And I hadn't necessarily planned it, it came out. But it was after this 5 years of leading this double life, and it was for a period of probably a year where the guilt, the lies, the deceit was eating me. And I think the power that you're looking for comes out of probably not being able to be, I was just being so dishonest and realizing at that age, late 30s, still had a lot of life hopefully to live. It ain't a dress rehearsal, and I've got to live it the right way. Ironically, 6 months after telling my wife, my dad died. He'd been unwell, and I won't go into the detail of it. But he died, and we were at the crematorium. He was being cremated. He was about to go into the furnace. Doors were about to open. And he had a lot of his chums, and they were all from the building industry, so other builders, estate agents, property people. And they all decided to stand around his coffin and just to sort of wave him off. And they were all saying, and I listened to them quite carefully, and I'm standing there because I'm the eldest son. And I'm standing there, I'm listening to them, and they're all going, what a great bloke Dennis was. What a great mate. What a good man. It was all the male. And I looked at my dad in there, he was covered out, lid was on, and I just thought, jeepers, it won't be that long before I'm in there, and I will have lived my whole life as a lie if I don't actually be the true me. And although I told Andrea 6 months before, I was on this sort of period of don't push it too hard, don't tell too many others. I hadn't told my mum, and that reinforced the view that I was going to be me. I was going to get on with it. So
And
events create the strength.
And how long was it before you decided, until you evolved into being a role model, as it were, before you realized that you had a responsibility to others?
Okay, so by 2003, I was working as Antonia, and by 2004, we told the 3 kids, and I was coming back home as Antonia, back to Guildford as Antonia, and it wasn't shortly long after that I was Antonia all the time. I got to 2007, and we can come on to the business side. That's when I did something, I think, really remarkable business-wise. But by 2010, I said to Andrea and my 3 children, I said, I really got fed up reading media about trans, got fed up reading all the shit that keeps getting written, and how they want to make every trans story a harrowing story, always repeat the agony and everything. And I just said, this is not right, because we haven't had that. That's not our story. So I just said, can I have your permission to put my head above the parapet and talk about us? Andrea was a bit nervous initially. She was always worried about the crank calls afterwards, which she's never had. And they said, beautifully, they said, no, do that. And so from 2010, I decided to tell our story. And it is our story. It's Andrea's and my story, the kids' story. And my kids have been brilliant, absolutely supportive, and it reinforces my view that, the issues we worry about now and what we're trying to do is this generation's, certainly within, the Britain, America, and all the rest. It's going to wash through, all these are going to wash out through the next generation.
Well, here's hoping. We've got a Tory government and Donald Trump in the U.S. So
no, if you've got the 3 children I have, and you listen to what they think, what they do, how they treated me, then I do have that fervent view that most of the millennials are like them, and that's brilliant. I mean, it's going to be difficult. It might be more difficult in other parts of the world, and obviously other countries, and certainly with the BAME community, it might take more than one generation. All the prejudice and all that nurturing bias that sits within families to be washed through. But we're heading in the right direction with the young, for sure.
And how big of a role, if any, do you think that your transition played on you then starting your own firm?
Okay, so Andrea, when I told her, she said, I'm going to need space to deal with this. And we didn't talk years, but obviously it turned out to be a couple of years. And I just thought, no, I need to be Antonia. So I decided to transition at work. And
at the time you were working at a building firm.
I was working.
I don't even know how to refer to it because it
was a chartered surveying practice based in St James's in the West End. We were 45 strong business, 5 equity partners, of which I was one, and 6 equity partners, and I was one of them. And so I had to say to myself, Christ, I've got to tell my partners that I'm going to be coming to work as a woman, and I am the woman I know I am. And anyway, this firm, active for the great and the good, all about the money. All my partners have gone to public school except me. I'd sat around the board table, partnership table, listened to all the jokes about the secretaries. All of them were pretty sexist. Yeah, yeah. I won't go there with all the detail. And I'm just saying to myself, how do I tell them this?
How do you tell them that?
Yeah, I know. So I decided the only way I was going to do it was I had to put them on guard. I had to put them on the edge. I had to sort of make them think there was a problem other than the problem they were going to face. So I decided to phone each of them individually, and I said, I've got a problem on a job I'm doing. It's going pear-shaped. Don't know if we might need to tell the insurers because we might be sued. I would like to talk to you about it outside of the office. So how about meeting me in the wine bar tonight, tomorrow night, and we can talk about it over, and I can take your wise counsel as to how you think I should deal with it. Don't want to tell the other partners at the moment. Just want it between you and me. So I decided to do it.
This is a lesson.
I decided to go. I decided to go through the partnerships, through the partners, working with the most approachable first, and leave the credible ones to the end. So phoned them and obviously arranged the wine bar, but what they didn't know was I went back to my flat and I got changed and I became Antonia. I'm sitting in the wine bar, they turn up, they look around, they don't see Anthony, and they start to leave. I go up, tap them on the shoulder and say, I am here. There's something you need to know. Come and sit down and let's have a chat. And so I tell them what I've been doing, who I really am, and what my plan is. Being a partner, I knew we were moving offices in 10 months' time because we'd exercised a break on the lease. And I said, I will stay as Anthony until we move, but the day we move, I'm going to be Antonia. I'm going to be turning up in a frock, as the phrase is. And I said, what I'd like you to do is just not tell the others, because I'm going to do exactly this with the others. If you felt it's worked for you and you now realize why I'm doing it this way, you won't tell them. And over the next 2 weeks, I'm going to speak to all of the partners. Last one, you all go away, you think about it, you come back and you tell me whether you're happy for me to work as Antonia. If you're not, I will go. I will leave. I'm not going to make a drama out of it. I know, as Antonia, I can cut the mustard. I'm not frightened, and I'm prepared to do that. But if you want me to stay, and I would love to stay, I'm going to be even better as the woman I know I really am, then you'll decide. So I went through all of the partners, same process, and about 2 months later, one of them popped along and said, we've talked about this, and we've decided. You make too much money to ask you to leave. So there was no concern.
And the business case for diversity, ladies and gentlemen.
So there was no compassion. There was no concern about my mental well-being or health. It was all about the money. And
As it often is.
As it often is. And one of the partners was a partner that worked with me. I had employed him, and he'd become a partner too. And he was the first one I told after Andrea. And he has been the most perfect ally. But what happened was, I turned up, we moved offices, I turned up as Antonia, as I said, but they hadn't bothered to tell the staff. They hadn't prepared the staff.
No, of course, because that would take compassion and empathy and all the things they don't have.
Of course. So for the first couple of days, the staff thought it was highly amusing, all disappeared to the pub and talked about the subject at lunchtime. I just popped an email around and just explained and just said, any questions, come and see me. It's business as usual. Anyway, I worked at that practice that I had joined from school and trained with for 5 years after transitioning. And they were brilliant years, and loved it. And I was told I was going to be the next senior partner after Richard, which it was generally my term, but I thought they might sort of decide to sort of leapfrog me.
Well, I mean, yeah, I would expect that too, because they're going to go from having Richard to Antonia.
I would have been the first female senior partner of that practice.
And the rest, yeah.
Anyway, I just got to the point where I was seeing life differently, and I was enjoying working as Antonia, and I was just questioning staying at the firm. It was where I joined from school, I trained, and I'd had my battles with them over where we wanted to go, how we wanted to develop the business, and I just thought, no, I'm going to go and create my own business. I can do it now as the woman I am.
And so do you think it was that, this was all a rehearsal for actually
for the leaving?
Rehearsal? No, like a training, effectively, for you to do this yourself?
No, because it sort of came about, I was disenchanted with things about the practice before I transitioned, so they were deep-rooted disenchantment.
I guess what I mean is you obviously discovered a lot about yourself internally, your grit, resolve, etc.
Yeah.
Do you think that prepared you for making this leap that you might not have made
otherwise?
I
think the resilience, the whole pathway in terms of locking something away, trying to keep it locked away, allowing it to come out, dealing with that, it makes you a very resilient individual. And resilience is is a really important tool for business, particularly for leadership. But I just wanted more. I wanted to do more as Antonia. The partner who was the ally of mine, who I told first, I told him I'm going. I had to give 6 months notice. I said I'm going to go, and a couple of days later he said, I've been thinking about what you told me. He said, I'm coming with you. He said, I'm not staying. So he and I then started planning things. We told the other partners. They didn't like the idea of us going. They said we would destroy the business because we had so many clients. I was running half. I was responsible for half of the firm. So they tried to keep us and stop us going by devious, but also by promising more money and all that sort of stuff. But I actually stuck to my gun. I said, no, I'm going. And what happened was, over the space of announcing it to my team, all of my team came to me and they said, we're coming with you. So when I left, I took 18...
Is there a company still there?
Well, I took 18 staff and another partner, and we set up on the 1st of April 2007, which became a very strange period to set up for a property building consultancy, because within a year we had Lehman's going crash and a very different property world, particularly in London. But when we started in April 2007, I was highly motivated by what I was doing, really motivated, and I was motivated that I had Andrew's support. When I went to the office, the new office, so the firm in St James's, I had a restraint of trade on me, in that I couldn't work within 5 miles of St James's, so I had to find new offices in a different area of London. I decided to look in the city, found my offices by St Paul's Cathedral. When I we fitted those offices out and we started our first day there, and I saw all those people that had moved across with me, they were more motivated than I'd ever seen them. And I just realized the power of what I was doing. It was going on to them. They were charged by what we were doing. We were creating a new business. It was a transgender woman that was spearheading it. We had, allied partners who were straight as they come, buying into all of this, and the staff just, they have this view about me. They always said that, I'd be the first over the hill and they'd follow. But, they were following what I was doing in this sense, which is totally, not what's to be expected. And it made us really powerful. And a lot of those people are still with me. Some of them have gone and I've replaced them, and I've tried to sort of make sure we're more diverse and more inclusive. But the business is great, and we actually powered our way through 2008, 2009. So for me, it has been really powerful and very motivating.
And I think that's a lesson. It's certainly a lesson to us all in fearless leadership and being our authentic selves. So I'd like to end on 2 things. So obviously many in our community, LGBT, are much less privileged than we are. And what would you say to those people? What would you hope they would take away from your story?
Yes. The issue of others like me around the world, and obviously their prospects, does trouble me. And in my own little way, I'm trying to help in that sense. In terms of being able to offer guidance or tips, it's difficult. I mean, I would say that, believe in yourself. I've always been the person that, I've always been happy to dream, and there's been lots of instances where I said that's never going to be possible, and I've been proved wrong. It is possible. There has to be a lot of luck involved, but I do think you have to want to get there. You have to want to do it. If you've got the frame of, if you've got the glass half empty frame of mind, then it makes whatever challenge you have that much harder. You're always finding the reasons not to do something. So you need to have glass half full attitude to it.
That actually answers my second question, which was give some advice to our entrepreneurs. But I think that's the same thing, no?
Yeah, I guess it is. I think I've learnt, and in a very demonstrable way, that when you're told something's not possible or someone's going to have a certain view about it, that isn't always the case. You test people, but the one thing I do advice-wise to trans people that I know and when I talk generally is what I said earlier on, is that when you've decided you're going to transition, take it slowly, take it steady, because everyone else has got to transition around you. And if you push it too fast, too quick, you start to alienate them because they're struggling to understand initially why, then how does it affect them, what impact is it going to have on them long term, you know, and like all things in life, you know, if you don't give them time to breathe, think, and understand about what you're doing, then naturally they're going to get defensive about things. So taking your time is very powerful. I've learned that big time.
I think we'll end on that. Antonia Belcher.
Thank you.
Now it's time for us to have some fun. So thanks to the generous sponsorship of Blued, we are live streaming this event, as I've said, and I will be interviewing people as we're having drinks and listening to Munra Bergdorf, whom I can see in a very low-cut pink dress, which I'm excited about seeing up close. And, sorry, I just objectified her. And we've got canapes and absolute cocktails, and you all have dots on, colored dots, because we always play a connecting game, which I think we'll do in there. I think we should just go and have some drinks. Thank you so much for celebrating our first birthday with us. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Antonia. Oh, I should also say, His Kind magazine you can find on your seats. It's Josh Fletcher, who's one of our SeriesQ entrepreneurs. It's his new issue. And we're having a Gay Times Pride brunch on Saturday morning. Ask me about it in the bar.